I love that. I think I'm going to share that with my therapist. Where I thought you were going to go with this question, where I thought you were headed, was Debbie Millman isn't pursuing a career, she's pursuing a life, because I feel like it's all just part of my life as opposed to a career. But I love the idea that you think that I'm having fun, because I'm trying really hard. Hi, Matthew. I'm Debbie Millman, a fellow podcaster of a podcast called Design Matters. And I'm also an educator, a writer, an artist, and a designer. Well, I'm probably 3 times your age, so I've had a lot more time on the planet to do the things. I don't have children, and that makes a big difference to the elasticity of every day. And up until 5 years ago, I wasn't married. So I had a lot of time to just sort of do whatever I wanted to do. That's true. It isn't laborious. That's true. I mean, it is work, and that I put a lot of time and energy and effort and blood and sweat and tears and all the other cliches into doing the work. But I also feel very privileged to do the work. One of my favorite passages in that poem is that we are all late in a slow time. And I feel like I'm always trying to catch up, or to hoard time. And the last line of the poem is, "It is undone business I speak of, with my feet stretching out to the sea." And I also always feel like I am undone. I am undone business, that I am seeking to stretch myself out to the sea, to do more, to do better. It's a beautiful poem. That's why we named our dog Maximus. It's a very interesting question, Matthew, and one that I've been spending a lot of time thinking about. It's not out yet, but I have a new TED Talk that'll be released probably in the next couple of months. I did it at the end of last year, 2025, and it's all about how long the feeling of accomplishment lasts for people. Because for the last 5 years, in addition to doing Design Matters now for 20 years, I've run a column on printmagazine.com called What Matters. And in that, it's a Proustian questionnaire. You know, I asked the same 10 questions to everyone, and it's been about 400 people so far. So one of the questions is, how long does the feeling of pride last after you succeed at something? And most people answer a week. Some people answer 5 minutes. Some people answer, a few seconds. And so I did this TED Talk on why. Why is that? Because it is pervasive. This isn't just anecdotal. This is statistical significance. And I felt that it was worthy of trying to understand better. And what I've come to realize is, I don't think that highly creative people are fueled by accomplishment or for accomplishment or motivated so much by accomplishment. I think that what we're really addicted to is the feeling of making. And it's when we feel like we're making something that we feel like we are worthy, or that we're fulfilling a purpose, or that we are one with the earth, so to speak. And that when we're finished, yes, we have a feeling of pride that it's finished, it's out there in the world. Hopefully it's being responded to well. But I think that emptiness isn't from the come down of pride or accomplishment. I think it's because we have an emptiness that we need refueling from another creative endeavor. And that is how I feel. I feel like every time I finish something, the urge to do something else is, I think, coming from the need to be making, the need to be creating, the need to feel like I'm fulfilling some potential that I've yet to discover. I definitely feel like I am very dependent on what I make representing my right to exist. Well, I mean, it's a little bit sad, frankly. Like, it should just be okay to be without having to prove myself or provide some benefit or living for external validation. But at this point, still working on it. I was talking to my students last night about their sense of value. And I asked them to remember the first time they ever felt proud of themselves, like in their lives. And it is resulting in some really interesting answers and, I think, insight into themselves as to what first ignited a sense of meaning in them. No, I have the answer. No, I have the answer. I actually told the students last night. It was between second and third grade. I was at sleepaway summer camp. The summer was nearing its end. I don't remember how much longer camp was in session, but I know it was in August at some point, and we were all getting ready to go back to our lives and our homes and whatnot. And I was going into the third grade. And I remember thinking, wow, third grade. That is so awesome that I am now going into the third grade. And I felt a palpable sense of pride that I had accomplished that. I was so proud of myself. Third grade. Little did I know that I was going into the third grade. I might have peaked, I might have peaked that year because I was going into the third grade. My teacher was named Mrs. Lerner. And I remember being in elementary school in the cafeteria where everybody went for the first day of school to like get their school, their assignment, where they were going to be, what teacher they were going to have, etc. And this is the 60s. So I remember Mrs. Lerner was my teacher, and I was so excited to see all my friends that I hadn't seen because I was away at sleepaway camp. And I was like talking with them and they were talking with me, and I was talking so much to my friends that I got in trouble. And Mrs. Lerner like brought me to the front of the line and was like holding my hand to keep me sort of focused on getting to the classroom. And then I got to the classroom and, school started, whatever. But then it came time, I guess, I don't know, some weeks into the school year. And for whatever reason, we were voting for class officers, like class president and whatnot. And I was nominated by somebody in the classroom, and all the people that were nominated had to go out into the hallway while everybody voted. And so then I came back into the classroom, and I had been voted president of my third grade class. And then shortly thereafter, we moved. My parents moved. We moved from Howard Beach, Queens to Staten Island. And so then I had to start all over in a brand new school. And really that year and into fourth grade and fifth grade, everything in my life fell apart. So that feeling of pride that I had at the beginning of third grade may have been a premonition for how great the first couple of months of my third grade year was going to be. But after that, it all kind of fell apart. Oh, well, that's when, we moved to Staten Island. There was a very weird way that the Department of Education was managing new students in that school district. And so there were 6 third grade classes. 3-1, 3-2, 3-3, 3-4, 3-5, 3-6. 3-1 were the smartest kids, and 3-6 were the slowest. And could you imagine like what that did to everybody's self-esteem? So for new kids, what they did was they put you in the middle. They put you in 3-3. And then depending on how you did, you either went up or down in the same school year. And so I started in 3-3. Then they moved me to 3-2. Then they moved me to 3-1. And then, as if it wasn't enough that at that point in my life, I had been in 4 third grade classes, they moved me into a combined class with 3rd and 4th graders. So that was very sort of destabilizing. But then my parents got divorced. It was very acrimonious. And it was really terrible, terrible, terrible. And then my mother got remarried, and that was even worse because he was abusive in the worst possible ways and really evil. And so that became what I call the beginning of my dark years, my black years of being just in a very bad sort of emotional, physical state for 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. And then things began to change middle of 8th grade and into 9th grade when they got divorced. My father came back into my life and things improved. It's been 50 years since those experiences. And while they never go away, you come to metabolize them in different ways and calibrate them into ways of coping and learning and healing. And I've tried to do all of that. I think part of what I had to contend with at the time in those years that these things were happening was, by this point, it was now into the early 70s, very early 70s. And I was not aware of these things even being conceivable in the world. And honestly, it was so horrific that I couldn't even envision it happening to anybody else in the world. I didn't know how pervasive childhood sexual abuse is. And so at the time, I thought I was the only person in the world it was happening to. That's how isolated I'd been from the whole topic of and, you know, it just it was inconceivable to me that anybody else could do something like that. And so, you know, when my stepfather at the time said, you know, nobody would believe me, I believed him. I believed that nobody would believe me if I came out with this like incredulous, crazy story that this was happening to me. And then also he threatened the safety of my brother and my mother and said he would kill them. And I believed that too. So I didn't say anything for years and years. And there's a certain sense of being damaged that I felt that I was never going to be normal. I was never going to be like anybody else, that I had been ruined, especially as I got older and started to realize the depth of the trauma, because it takes a while to really feel your feelings in this regard, because I think if you do feel them at the time, they'd probably kill you. And so, you know, I think my brain and my psyche was protecting me for a long time just to keep me alive. A lot of dissociation and so forth. What's interesting is at the time I was keeping a diary. I wasn't writing about that specifically, but I was writing around it. And so that's remarkable to me. And then over the years, in other diaries that I had, before I really started dealing with it like full on, head on in therapy, I was trying to make sense of it through writing. And that's also, I'm really grateful to my younger self for having done that, because it's very concrete, very specific. I don't want to use the word evidence in that it's not, it shows me that it's true. It's true, but it shows me my thinking process and what I was struggling with and what I was going through and like real in the moment feelings. I think we forget a lot of what we actually experience when we're experiencing something in the memory of experiencing it. It changes. Your memories sort of change the focus or change the way in which you think about something the more you integrate it into your consciousness. So it's been very, very interesting to see how I coped, some of the self-destructive tendencies I had back then, some of the ways in which I was really cruel to myself, punishing myself for not being able to, being too afraid to tell anybody, feeling that why didn't anybody notice? Why we were living in a small house with one bathroom where most of the abuse occurred, and like, what did people think he was doing with me in there? Like, there were so many questions, and all of that writing has really helped me process a lot of it too, because it is like being back in that moment, raw, unfiltered, unedited. I wasn't thinking about, what somebody else was going to think about writing. I don't know if I would use the word hard. I think it was more a sense of real empathy for that young girl. I don't know that it was hard, but it was sad. But I don't know that necessarily sad is bad or hard. I think sad is actually good, because it's experiencing that full emotion. Run. When you go to Aunt Judy and Uncle Lewis's house, do what you wanted to do, which was tell everybody and never leave their house, and stay with your cousin Eileen, who's still to this day my best friend. So I would say, don't believe the bad people, and do what you want to do. I'm conflicted in my thoughts about this, because I very much believe in science. And so anything like woo-woo in that regard feels almost impossible. Like, how is that possible? But then I also do believe in magic a little bit. And so I think, I don't know. That's the answer. I don't know. There's a part of me in trying to make sense of the world that would like to think that we are destined to fulfill our purpose. But if you think about the vastness of the universe, if you think that we're one of trillions of galaxies, that Voyager, which has just left our solar system, has not even traveled, or has just traveled one light day. One light day. It's been 50 years and it's traveled one light day. That is how vast just our solar system is. To think that us little feeble ant-like creatures, in the grand scheme of things, in the size of the universe, not even, we're like molecules, we're like neutrinos, that it hardly seems possible that we're that special, that there'd be a sense of destiny. Like, do you think ants think about whether or not they're destined to something? I don't know. It just feels really, really unlikely. But then again, we are all here. We're all thinking and talking about it. If we can think and talk about it, it might be real. If I was smart enough. I'm not smart enough. Math, science, not my bailiwick. No. But I do wish that it was. Oh my God. People are always asking me, if you could talk to anybody, dead or alive, who would it be? I'm like, Albert Einstein, please. Oh, yes. every single day, hours at a time. I waste an inordinate amount of time trying to figure out how this all happened. Where'd the hydrogen come from? Where'd the helium come from? Did something happen before the Big Bang? Why is expansion increasing? I mean, yeah, all the time. My wife finds it hysterical. Like all of a sudden I'll be like, do you realize that Voyager is only one light day away? And she'd be like, I was thinking about the Real Housewives of Connecticut. So, whatever. Not to diminish her intelligence in any way, because she is the smartest person I know. Years and years ago, probably 20 years ago at this point, I was at a conference. I was moderating a conference, and Mikio Kaku was there, the astrophysicist, theoretical astrophysicist. And I asked him if he thought there was any, like, what are the odds of there being any intelligent life out there in the universe aside from us? And he talked a little bit about the odds in terms of, if there were this many planets that had a species that was more intelligent or less intelligent. And then he made up a little story on the spot, I guess. And he said, well, imagine if you were walking, and he was actually trying to compare what a more intelligent species might think of us. And so he was talking about, imagine if you're taking a hike in the woods, and you come across a ant colony. Would it ever occur to you to go up to the ants and say, take me to your leader? And so he was talking about how if there is more intelligent life in the universe, why would they, or it, or whatever, care about us? I think that looking over us could also be envisioned as a higher power or religion, which then some people use to provide guardrails on how they should be living. Oh, I think it's helpful for some people. It's helpful for some people that feel really connected to a higher power. I am very, as you can well imagine, conflicted about what, if there is any higher power, what that could or would or should or wouldn't or shouldn't or couldn't be. But I had an experience a couple of months ago. I visited some family and went to, and this particular person in my family has a very profound relationship with God. And she goes to church every Sunday. And it's a really progressive church, very accepting, very diverse. And I went with her. I really wanted to go see and experience. People were being baptized that day. And most of the 8 people were being baptized. And I think 7 of them were adults or teenagers. And it was really profound. This wasn't fake to them. They really, truly felt the presence of a higher power. And I find that really fascinating, to have that faith. I mean, that is faith. They believe. But they believe, I think, in really following the tenets of their Bible. And these particular people that are in my family are only good people. Like, they only want to follow the very sincerest ways of thinking about their place on the planet and with others. They're very generous. They give back to the community, do a lot of community service. I mean, they're the best kind of people. And, I don't know if you've watched Pluribus. Have you seen Pluribus, the new TV show? It's very, very good. And it's very much about, what do you believe? What is our purpose? What is our individuality? What is our agency? What is our role as individuals versus communities? And, well, the question assumes that I have some. Where do I get my courage? I don't don't know that I have a lot of courage, Matthew. I think I have a lot of hope. Hope fuels me. I see somebody trying her best to figure it all out. I didn't have a lot of guidance, as you can well imagine. I didn't have a lot of role models. So I really had to look at other people and see what they were doing for ways in which I could make my own life. And as a result, I felt quite a lot of envy and despair at not being more equipped to deal with adult life. But I learned I have a lot of resilience. I have a lot of stamina. I'm not somebody that takes no for an answer for very long. And I have a lot of hope. And I've had a lot of luck. I've been lucky. No, I think now cold calls are all spammy, and I I loved being able to make cold calls because that opened up a lot of doors for me. Like I cold called Massimo Vignelli. He answered the phone. Like Massimo Vignelli answered the phone. And that's how my relationship with him began. That's how I started to that's how our friendship began. And that's how I got to interview him for the first time. I think I interviewed him 3 times in his life, all because of a cold call. So, but that doesn't really happen anymore because people mostly rely on their cell phones, and very few people ever pick up calls from an unknown number. So, those days I think are behind us. But yes, I got my first branding job because of a cold call, and I got the opportunity to do Design Matters from a cold call. One of my colleagues at Sterling put through a cold call to me, and it was a fledgling internet radio network looking for people to host radio shows. I thought they were offering me a job. They weren't. They were offering me an opportunity to pay them to produce a radio show on my behalf. But at the time, I was so desperate to do something outside the world of corporate design that I did sign up. And 20 years ago, that's how the show was born. The first 10 years of my life, of my adult career, were really marked by a lot of failure, rejection, a bit of humiliation thrown in. And then when I got to Sterling, or even my job right before Sterling, which was the company that ultimately became Interbrand, that was the first time in my life that I was really successful at something and making money. And by then I was in my mid 30s. And so like my 33, 34, 35. And at that point, because I had wanted to be successful and because I had been living hand to mouth for so long, worrying about money for so long, that when I finally was becoming commercially successful, I completely dedicated myself to that and gave away all of the other sort of ancillary, non-successful creative things that I had been doing, but loved doing. And I did that for almost a decade. So let's say 8, 9 years at that point. And it was intoxicating. It was intoxicating to be successful at something and to be acknowledged for being successful. It wasn't just like, oh, I know I'm good at this. It was like, wow, other people are noticing I'm good at this too. And then about 8 years or so into that, I started to feel like, well, maybe that other creative part of me, all the things that I loved doing that I wasn't successful at, that was all dying, and that I was going to lose my creative soul. And at that point, I started writing again and was really completely wide open to any new creative endeavor that might come my way. And this was so unusual and so unexpected and so cool that I thought, why not? I'm making money. Why not invest a little bit into myself and into my own sort of self actualization? It's unbelievable to me that happened. Unbelievable. I think it's comes from a lot of it comes from longevity, being very lucky at being right at the beginning of a very brand new technology which took off, and being able to get access to some of the most creative people in the world who have trusted me to have really open-hearted conversations about their lives and their creative practice. Because I think that when people are confronted with hard times or bad times, the tendency is to catastrophize, globalize. I don't know why, but I'm really glad you mentioned that fortune cookie, because I'm going to actually write that down and tape that up somewhere so I have it again in front of me. I think it's just human nature to feel like this bad thing, to be worried that something bad may never ever go away. And we metabolize almost all of our emotions, and when bad things happen, I think it is terrifying to think that, well, this might always be the way things are now. But that's usually not the case. And I love that I got that advice from a fortune cookie. You've really done your research. I have to say kudos to you, because I haven't thought about that in a really, really long time. Well, it has. I'm a native New Yorker. I've lived in all the boroughs except the Bronx. Although now I'm married to somebody who, before we met, had a home in Los Angeles, and that's where I am right now. And so we go back and forth. I spend a lot of time in Los Angeles, and I love it here. Never thought I'd say that in a million trillion years. I never, ever imagined living anywhere but New York. I literally, before meeting Roxanne, had never been away from New York for more than 6 weeks. I went to college in New York. I'm a New Yorker through and through. I love that about me. That's one of the things I like about me, is that I'm a New Yorker. I'm very proud of being a New Yorker, getting back to sort of full circle, that feeling of pride. I am very proud of being a New Yorker. I would have thought that before spending time now in Los Angeles. I do love Los Angeles. I love the weather. I love being able to garden here all the time. I love the sky. It's a very different pace, different tempo, different everything. Big surprise of my life. Yeah, it's really hard. No, I'm about to start working on managing the soil for the next season of vegetable growing. And we unfortunately just had a tree fall in our backyard. It had been there for 60 years or so. And I love this tree. It was sitting right outside. I literally would be facing it, because I have a big picture window in my office. So I'm looking out, and there was the tree. It was that tall. It reached over the top of the house. And we had torrential rains at the beginning of the year. No, at the end of 2025. And over Christmas, we were in Houston visiting Roxanne's brother for the holidays. And when we came home, the tree had fallen. So we were in great despair, still great despair, missing it. Its final act of love towards us, though, was not damaging anything. This was a gigantic tree. If anybody has copies of my book, Love Letter to a Garden, you can see it in that book. There was a wonderful article in the New York Times about our home here in Los Angeles back in April. You can see great pictures of the tree there. You see it's the centerpiece of the entire yard. So with it gone, it feels very sad. I have to figure out what I'm going to do in its stead, but it didn't damage anything. Not even a small tree that I've been growing for the last 7 years, which literally branches fell around it and not on it. It's mind-boggling. I've had to learn so much along the way, Matthew, that I think it's just inevitable that things took longer for me. So I would say almost everything: love, success, understanding purpose, which I'm still trying to understand. All of these things. I'm a late bloomer. A deep sort of cellular understanding that the path that you're on is the one you're supposed to be on. But getting back to our earlier conversation about destiny, there's some inherent dichotomies in my answers, which I am going to be the first to point out here. Actually, compulsively making things worse taught me not to compulsively make things worse, because I saw how I was making things worse than they needed to be in my reactions to things. And so I've learned how to better manage my reactions to things. I think people that go through a lot of early childhood trauma tend to get triggered much more easily by things, by uncertainty or vulnerability or what they might perceive as a slight or a exclusion or something that may or may not even be accurate. But I have learned over the long haul now, in my 60s, to breathe before I respond. And sometimes that breath has to last a long time. I am much better now at managing my cortisol responses. That took a long time. Oh, because I'm not. I'm not, Julie Moretu, Amy Sherrill, McLean Thomas, they're all, like Marilyn Minter, Deborah Cass, Patricia Cronin, Ai Weiwei, they're capital A artists. They're working artists. I am a creative person that expresses myself through illustration and through words and through an examination of identity in any number of ways, but I'm not an artist with a capital A. I'm terrified at what is happening in this country. I am terrified by the lack of backbone in responding to what's happening by our elected officials. I am afraid for the future in a way that I never was or even considered for this country, because of the leadership or lack thereof, because of the corruption, because of the complete and total lack of morality. Yeah, I think I'm most afraid of censorship, of people being afraid to say something or do something or make something because of what might happen in response. I mean, my wife is a cultural critic. She writes about gender. She writes about politics. I worry about her going to events and what the response might be by the haters or the MAGA hats. It is extreme. It's terrifying. And I'm afraid of censorship and retaliation and punishment and abuse from our politicians for our First Amendment rights, expressing our First Amendment rights. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of more writing lately. So I wrote a piece in the New York Times, my first ever op-ed, late 2025, which was a real defining moment for me. And I also made the illustration. So I did both the writing and the art. And then I just recently did a piece for Time magazine about the visual language of power. And then I did another piece that was just happened this week, came out in the health vertical of the Boston Globe on the redesign of the USDA's food pyramid, which is rather awful. So I deconstructed that and I remade it. It looks like it's made with emojis. So I actually remade it with emojis. So I've been doing a lot more writing. And then Roxanne and I recently, last year, we acquired a website called the Rumpus, which is a literary site. And we just redesigned it with a former student of mine. He graduated from my undergrad class about 10 or 12 years ago, Santiago Carrasquilla. He runs a firm called Art Camp, and we commissioned him to redesign the rumpus.net. And that just, the new design just relaunched. We haven't relaunched the whole site yet, but you can see the new design now. So I was super excited about that. And just about to start a new season of Design Matters, season 21. And yeah, those are some of the things I'm working on. I mean, all my time is free because I can decide what I want to do and not do. And I have a lot of time. I love watching television, as you probably assessed from my recommendations. And I love movies, and I love watching shows with my wife. We can, parallel work or work and watch. And being in LA, I actually have a lot more free time because I don't have as many friends here. And so I don't have as many invites to do things. Interstellar, Arrival, as good as it gets. It's kind of unpopular to say because he's kind of been canceled, but I still love the movie Annie Hall. Love it. Almost anything with Diane Keaton in it. And so one more. Oh, Ad Astra. I love that movie. Oh, and then the movie Contact. Sorry, you said Contact. Like the movie. I mean, I am super fascinated by the notion of the sort of amorphous feeling of accomplishment. And so I do, in working on my TED Talk, I was revisiting some of those conversations. I do go back to actually my conversation with David Lee Roth, which I've talked about quite a lot, the former frontman of Van Halen, who, when I asked him what it felt like to sort of be the most popular dude on the planet back in the 80s with the number one album and video and tour and whatnot, he shared how you have to be really careful when you get to the top of the mountain because there's usually only one way to go, and it's always cold and you're often alone. And that's what gave me another sense that I wanted to take my time sort of going up the mountain and didn't want to peak until the day before I died. So that's the number one thing I go back to, the number one thing. And I talk about it all the time. It was an evolution. I didn't really start wearing all black until my 40s. I would always wear whatever in different colors. And then in my 30s, I started to move towards, or actually it was, I think, the beginning of my 40s. Because I remember starting Sterling, I was wearing a pink trench coat the first day of my walking into Sterling. I remember that really, really clearly. And then I evolved into more muted beige, brown, gray, blue, dark navy blue, dark blue, black. And then it made it just a lot easier to think about what everything goes with everything. Everything goes with everything. I'm really into texture. So a lot of what I have has texture to it. And it doesn't show the dirt. Although my brother did once say, just because it doesn't show the dirt doesn't mean it's not dirty. And so, yeah, my iPad and my iPencil. And I've gotten into Canva. Canva is very easy and really intuitive. It's very controversial, but you know what? I'm all for ease. And I also have been helping and advising them in how they create their tools. So, and they're listening. So I like to be loyal. I'm also somebody that's very motivated by assignments. So if I get an assignment that I'm really excited about, I put everything into it. Sometimes I'll procrastinate, but usually my procrastination is out of laziness, not out of writer's block. Deadlines, no choice. That's why deadlines are really good for me, because then I don't like to let people down. Roxanne blows by her deadlines sometimes. And I'm like, how could you do that? And she's like, because I can't come up with an idea or something. I'm like, but you committed to it. Like I take the commitment more seriously than the output. She takes the output more seriously than the commitment. But she's also, brilliant. Higher standards. I'm glad that you feel that it looks more organic than it is. No, it's a great deal of thought, procrastination, putting things off, being afraid. I tend to do things for longer than I should. No, I like to do a lot of different things. I don't want to ever be niched. No, I've never been niched. I've never ever been niched. Even in like high school, I did 15 things. Well, thank you. I am honored